Today I've decided to make a quick video because I have finished Deus Ex Mankind Divided, and I have some, let's say, mixed feelings about the game. Starting with the positives. Soundtrack, great, as usual. Visuals, very nice. Gameplay, buttery smooth. The story, up to a certain point, and we'll get to that, great. But it's plagued by a problem that is now becoming very, very relevant and problematic in AAA gaming: microtransactions. And I'm hardly the first to say this, but I just feel as though it is important. So let me start by saying I'm not against games having microtransactions. I think that in some cases, it's how a studio earns money, and it's also how they support continued content, like live updated content. So I understand the necessity of having microtransactions in certain games. Now, where I take issue with it is in games like Deus Ex Mankind Divided, mostly because these are games that don't really benefit from being a service. That might be my perspective as a gamer who grew up playing 90s games, where you could literally, after purchasing the game, you didn't have to spend another cent on the game. You just had to play it, and your skill would determine what items you got. Like, that's the fine line here, is that one system was skill-based and then another is pocketbook-based. I wasn't born in the 90s, but I played games from the 90s as my first games. But anyway, regardless of my gaming history, the big elephant in the room is obviously EA and FIFA. Now, those games, I think the problem is that they're so intense on those microtransactions that they interfere actually with the service that the game provides. And then in the case of a game like Deus Ex Mankind Divided, they weren't even necessary to the game. They don't really impact anything, and it's stupid and goofy that they're even in there. That's a double-edged sword, because it's both a good thing because it isn't pay to win and it isn't pay to play beyond your upfront purchase, but it does damage the credibility of the game. I find it obnoxious that I see products in a virtual store on screen inside of a game. I don't know what it is, but I find it very off-putting, to say the least. And it's this kind of design, this like mobile game style design, that damages the experience of a AAA game. I didn't spend money on any of the microtransactions or even the DLC because I felt frankly insulted by the game's ending, in terms of I feel like they literally hacked off the plot halfway through, and that was another issue with the game. And I'm well aware of the development history and the idea that the publisher put those in and not Eidos Montreal, who developed the game. And it shows, but that's exactly my point, is that it shows that the developer didn't design the game with these in mind, and it looks really stupid as a result. And to me, that's the problem with mobile game design. I'm not trying to sound elitist here, but mobile games tend to be designed with a casual player in mind who doesn't really buy much beyond that game, so they just pour money into it. Now, that's not a problem. I'm not saying that those gamers are, because there's the argument that those gamers are ruining gaming and that it's damaging the entire market. And in a pure like business model sense, it is. The companies are responding to the consumer's ability and desire to continue to purchase the product, even as the microtransactions are essential to play or to have a meaningful experience in the game and feel like you have credibility inside the game. For example, Fortnite's like skin system and how that earns credibility because the base model is it's lame looking. It's lame looking and it screams like scrub or newbie anyway. So games are designed with that market in mind, at least the games that have these microtransactions in them. And I'm not even saying mobile game design is bad design, because it's not. It's just not the same design, and it's a design philosophy that doesn't mesh well with a single player game design unless you're going to separate the two noticeably, like split them straight down the middle. And the reason I say it's not good design is because it creates a dichotomy that a good service would not create. A good service shouldn't divide people straight down the middle. It should unite them around, wow, look at how great this service is. At least ethically it should. Business-wise, it's a great service if it makes money, but consumers don't like to just get screwed by a company, obviously. It creates a disconnect between what the game is doing and saying as a piece of media and what it actually ends up doing, which is it kind of alienates, like it splits its player base, especially in the case of a game like Mankind Divided. It splits its player base, and it's not a very good idea design-wise. Perhaps business-wise it is, because it increases revenue, which again is your objective as a business person. I'm not faulting you for that, for wanting to do that. But I am faulting whatever developer we're talking about if the climate is so skewed that the business side can dominate that much. Chiefly for the reason because from a design perspective, like I said, it alienates your player base. So there's this dichotomy of like the casual players and then the hardcore players. And the hardcore players will hate this system. They just will. Now the casual players will not, but they may be slightly off-put. Like I'm kind of in this crowd more, though I would say I care more than somebody who just casually plays a game. Basically, it creates this dichotomy that doesn't do the product much good. This phenomenon that Deus Ex Mankind Divided suffers from is likely never going to go away because of the fact that games are more expensive to make now. Because that's the other problem, is they need money to make these things because they're just so complicated. The amount of developers they have to hire, the amount of modelers, the amount of marketing people, the amount of just the sheer amount of cash that goes into these games. It makes sense why they need more money to make them, to justify making them. Because on the one hand, they have gotten cheaper to make, but they also get more expensive because people want bigger, better, more ambitious games. Especially in the case of EA, those games are ridiculously expensive. Now they make plenty on them, they get their return, but they are ridiculously expensive because of the licensing and all of the in-game materials, all of the marketing that is involved. But likely because of this, we won't see this slow down, we'll see it speed up. Now, how we take that as consumers will probably be not well, because we see that's why this whole thing, regardless of what the outcome was for the UK, that's why this whole thing went over so poorly. Because lately, at least prior to that whole hearing, it was kind of a thing that gamers like criticized, but was never brought onto a stage that was larger than just like gamers talking about this stuff. But there it was brought to a national stage. So if that tells you that people aren't receiving it very well, then yeah, that's basically what we're getting from that. But even going with the idea of games as a service, it's not very good service when you alienate your customers this way. That's where I find it problematic, not even just from a financial and like oh, it's scummy standpoint, but from just a design standpoint. Because your objective as your service is to please as many people as possible, and thus make more money. If the system was well implemented, we shouldn't have a concern with it as consumers. And usually that system will not be as financially viable for the company. But see, consumers don't like being screwed over by companies. They just don't. Unless you're some financial masochist, you don't like being screwed over by companies. And the irony, the sheer irony of all this talk of getting screwed over by companies and consumers pushing back is exactly the plot of Mankind Divided, which makes it extra weird to even see it in the game, because the game is criticizing this. So you get this very strange disconnect throughout the whole game, and it's a strange like design philosophy that you can tell there was some competition inside the studio about it. Because how could the game be self-critical like that, but then do it anyway? It's bizarre, and it isn't some type of postmodern critique of the gaming industry, at least not from what I can tell by playing it. Unfortunately, it's not. I wish it was, but it's not. The bottom line, though, is we'd better get a sequel for that game. We'd better get a sequel, because if we don't, I'll be so pissed. because A, of how good the game is, and B, because of just the fact that it has such an inconclusive ending, and it would be a shame to kill the series on an entry like this that kind of tries to sell out, tries to go for like an easier audience. So what's the takeaway from all of this? Firstly, if we're going to talk about games as a service, I'm not against the idea. I think that there's a very specific design way that you can do it, and it's mostly through multimedia pieces. For example, online articles, comic books, novels, tie-ins like that. I'm a firm believer that tie-ins are an excellent way to flesh out a game, and that when done well, they can make a boatload of money. At least they make that money off of me. The other key takeaway is that this, unfortunately, as much as we can criticize it, is likely not going to go away unless gaming becomes less popular, which no one can say for sure, but it doesn't seem as though that'll happen. 3. I held up 2, but I meant 3. AAA games in particular are where we really aren't going to see this shift away from GAAS as a model. As unfortunate as that is, their games simply cost too much money and there's too much riding on the amount of money that they can make. At least the AAA games that behave this way, the AAA game companies that behave this way, we won't see them change their practices too much. That is, unless, as consumers, we demand better service. And that's the ultimate key takeaway for all of these controversies and all of these issues that we're having with games being designed around this predatory model, that we demand that we get better service that is more worth our time and money. Don't say that we need to do away with games as a service, because that simply isn't going to happen, at least in the current market. As consumers and as producers, we need to demand that we create games with more content, more meaningful content, for less money, and that the money that is spent and the money that is asked for from a consumer is earned. And the final key takeaway, I want, very badly, a third Deus Ex prequel entry. I want a trilogy, because this game, as problematic as I found some of its design choices and its ending, was phenomenal. At least from a gameplay stance, it was. The stage is set for an awesome third game. So if we don't get that, Square Enix, I'm gonna be mad. We're gonna have problems. You may have made Nier Automata, but you won't escape my anger for not making Deus Ex Jensen Saga 3 or whatever we're calling it. Deus Ex, actually, yeah. Deus Ex Universe 3. Anyway, I hope that I still have given some new perspective to this idea that isn't inherently, oh, screw microtransactions, they're garbage. Because though I don't necessarily disagree with that, I see why companies do them. And I see it makes total sense. It's because they make money. And as a publisher, would you not want to make money? Anyway, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this. Please like and subscribe if you did. I'd greatly appreciate it, and I'd also appreciate any comments that you'd have on this video or suggestions for future content, because I'd love to do any sort of discussion in the realm of these games and in the realm of any media. Just let me know down below, and thank you so much, and I'll see you later. Not to mention the fact that let me see here. Let me see, take a look at this. This is the day 1 edition of the game, as you can see. Edition jour 1. If we're going to be French about this. This is not even mentioning the fact that they cut a story crucial mission from the game. And it's the stupidest thing, and it makes no sense. That I can't even defend. I can't come up with any reason to defend that, other than somebody thought wrongly that was a good idea. Where the heck is it? Oh, here we go. Day 1 edition includes... Oh my god, I can't... No, that's this side. It's this right here. I mean, I don't even need to do this, but includes additional mission desperate measures that should have been in every single copy of the game and shouldn't have been cut at all. It makes no sense that it's cut. So whoever did that, what were you thinking from a design standpoint? I want to know. If you're watching this for some ungodly reason, please let me know what the reasoning was. I'd love to know. And I'm not even super mad about that. I ended up, because I'm lazy, I ended up just watching footage of it. Even though it comes with my game, I just watched footage of it because I was too lazy, because you have to get a Square Enix account too. And I was like, no, I don't feel like doing that. So I just watched it. And yeah, it should have been in the game.